Hey guys, what is up? Quackware here. This is going to be the third tutorial in our big data series with Amazon EMR and Hadoop and Hbase. So in this tutorial we're going to be talking about the data set that we're going to be analyzing. We're going to take a look at it, try and figure out what a good structure for an Hbase table is, and we'll be talking about how to upload it to Amazon S3 so that we can access it from our EMR server. So first, finding the data. So the data I am looking at, as I mentioned before, is the New York City taxi data for 2013. And this is available thanks to a man named Chris Wong, who did a Freedom of Information Act in order to obtain this data. And it's basically a bunch of CSV files for both the called trip fare and trip data, and as you can see they're very large, so it's a perfect use for our distributed database that we'll have. And he mentioned the various fields that we have in here, and also I'll actually be downloading the files from this host who split them up into a bunch of different files, zip them up so that they're easy to download, so you can actually download this data here, and you can read the description about how to obtain it here. So I've actually downloaded one of each, one of the trip data and one of the trip fare files from this website. I will be downloading the rest of them and pretty much doing what I did in this tutorial like 12 times in terms of uploading all the data so that we have the entire data set available to us. So I've gone ahead and unzipped them after I've downloaded them, and I've taken a look at there's both trip data and trip fare. I took a look at trip data, which has these following CSV fields. So let's just go ahead and do this, put it up. So the various fields are medallion, which is a unique cab identifier. It's basically the ID of the cab. Hack license I'm not entirely unsure about, same with vendor ID. Actually, if we take a look at here, we can see some of the values that we have. This looks like another identifier, and then vendor ID is probably the person that sold the medallion. And then we have rate code, another kind of mysterious value. Store and forward flag, another value. Okay, here's some interesting information. We have pickup date time, which corresponds to, I guess, when the cab picked up a customer, drop off date time when they dropped them off, the number of passengers, trip time in seconds, trip distance, and Latin lons. So this is a lot of really cool and useful information that we can kind of get some good statistics out of. So that is it for the trip data CSV file, and let's go ahead and look at the trip fare. Let's go ahead, and here's our CSV files we have here. So what is this? Trip data, and this is fare. Cool. So this looks like more of the monetary things associated with it. So we have medallion, which again is the unique identifier. We have the hack license, which is another identifier, and the vendor ID. So these are the same between these two files. And we have pickup date time, which is also the same through these files. Payment type is probably something like credit card or cash, or looks like it's an integer. Oh, CSH, which is cash, and then credit is probably CRD or something like that. So we could probably get some interesting statistics out of that one as well. And we have fare amount, looks like 6.5, 6, 5.5, looks like the amount rounded to the 0.5 decimal or to 0. And we have surcharge, which is basically in certain times when you ride a cab in New York City based on the weekends or after a certain time like that, you'll get additional charges. MTA tax, another amount added to fares. Tip amount is the amount that the rider decided to tip, which looks like, trying to figure out which one this is. Lots of zeros, like 0.5 here and there. Tolls, if they ever ran into any bridges or something like that, and then the total amount, of course. So these two data sets are not really synced together. We have them in separate files. We not really able to identify one corresponding to the other. So if we have this data, such as the pickup date time, and medallion, and passenger count, how are we going to be able to link it to this fare data? So that's probably one of the most important things that we have to do. And as you can see, the things that are linked between these two files are these fields. Yep, that looks like it. And because this hack license is actually the same as the medallion, the only way for us to actually identify a single trip between these two files is going to be a combination of something like medallion and pickup date time. So we're going to assume that there isn't going to be a duplicate pickup date time for the same medallion. So basically the cab isn't going to pick up two different trips at exactly the same time, which I think is a pretty safe assumption. So if we want to be able to uniquely identify each basically trip in our database, we need to have a key for that. And Hbase has things called row keys, which is basically a way to uniquely identify something like a row. So I think a really good row key for us for Hbase would be medallion, colon, or some sort of separator, and then pickup date time, which looks like it is in a string, but we can convert it to something like a timestamp, which is, just like a long string of numbers, like an epoch timestamp. So I think this is a really good key for us to basically identify each of the trips, and then we can do things like our fields for this row in Hbase can be something like pickup date time, drop off date time, trip distance, basically anything we want to really, query information off of. I think a really good one is total amount, since that's basically, it's how much money is being made. Tip amount might also be a good one too. But we're going to basically we're going to have this, row key, and we're going to import as much of these individual values for each of these trips. So this is going to be our row key, and our columns are going to be pickup date time, drop off date time, trip distance, total amount. So for these 4 million plus rides, however many there are, we are going to, each of those is going to be a row in our database. So that's basically going to be our structure, and I'll go more into how this is going to look like in Hbase when we actually get towards the bulk import and the MapReduce code, because you'll be able to actually see it in the code, and you'll be able to understand a little bit better. Okay, so now that we've kind of figured out the general idea of what our data is going to look like, we need to actually upload our data. So as I mentioned before, I downloaded 2 CSV files, which we want to upload the zip ones because they're much smaller. I think if you take a look at here, we have these are around half a gig, about a gigabyte, and this is ballooned to 2 or 3 times its size. So we definitely want to upload the zip data. So again, we're going to come back to our Amazon console that we have here, which you saw in the previous tutorial. We're going to go ahead and click into S3. And I've already created a bucket here, but you're going to want to make sure to create a bucket, put it into US standard, whatever region you want, and you can name it something like raw data or backups or something like that, and you can create it. And for me, I've created one called Quackware New York City Taxi Data. And what we want to do here is we want to upload our zip files into this bucket so that it can be accessible from our server where we're running Hbase and Hadoop on. Now, you may think, okay, why are we doing this? Why don't we directly upload it to our servers? The reason is, again, it's a volatile server, so if it shuts down at any time and we don't have backups, then we'll lose all that data and we have to re-upload it all over again. So this is basically a safety net for us. Now, I mentioned before when we were creating our cluster configuration that there is something known as a backup, which if I can find it, where are you? Ah, yes. So you can do something like restore from backup, and you can specify, actually let's go ahead and create that since we didn't really do it before. Let's go ahead and Hbase Backup. Because I think it's important once you actually have data in Hbase, you do want to have a backup. Looks like this is already named. These are going to make this unique. And we can specify our backup name. and we want to, let's back it up in days, every 1 day, backup location. So this basically says, let's do hours, every 1 hour, since we aren't going to have our cluster for that. So if we actually store data in HDFS and Hbase, which we will in the next tutorial or in the next couple tutorials, it'll back that data up. So we'll both have the raw data in S3 available to us, and if we actually import that raw data into Hbase or HDFS, it'll also be available to us there. And there is a specific, I think you have to prepend it with S3. Again, learning experience, I forget exactly the schema. Okay, cool. So that's how you set up a backup. Yeah, there we go, S3. So now we're just going to go ahead and upload these 2 files. Add files, let's go to downloads. So these 2 CSVs, open that up and start upload. And I will be doing this for, the other, I guess, 11 or so files. And this may take a very long time depending on your connection. Another alternative is once you've set up your cluster, you can actually download it from this website directly using wget, if you're familiar with that Linux or Unix command. You can actually directly pull it from this website here by just copying the link. So like this link, you can do wget here, and it'll download it to your server, and from your server you can put it into S3. Now, I'm going to do it this way just because I have a pretty fast connection and I don't want to, incur any additional transfer fees with Amazon, because if you download it, they charge you by the gigabyte. So I just want to save a little money and do it that way. But you can do it any way you want as long as you actually get the data into S3. And I think that pretty much covers taking a look at this data set and uploading it. And make sure to tune in for the next tutorial where we'll be doing a lot more technical stuff, actually configuring our server, downloading things, setting up Hadoop and Hbase, basically putting our data set into Hadoop, things like that. So these next three tutorials will be a lot more interesting, I promise. This is kind of like a lot of fluff stuff. But yeah. That's it for this one. Make sure to tune in to the rest of the tutorials. This is Quackor signing out.